Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again today. So we're really lucky today to be joined by Joanna Swash. So Joanna was recruited as Moneypenny's first salesperson 15 years ago. And today she's the chief executive of a business that's grown to employ more than 1,000 people with a turnover of over 50 million. She's been Good morning. So Joanna, you've been a key part of that leadership team for such a long time now. But talk us through those early days of Moneypenny. You know, when you first started in that company, what was it that kind of attracted you to work there? And also, how did you then realize that what you really wanted in that role was leadership?
Oh, so let's go back, 15, 16 years. And the company that I joined here in Wrexham was, well, there was about 20 people. I was their first salesperson. And I was a bit of an entrepreneur. I had my own business, didn't go very well, and I needed to get a proper job for a little bit, And I never thought I'd be able to work for anybody else, which was just amazing, really. And I just absolutely found my niche because I found this growing business that had huge opportunities. And actually, I absolutely had so much respect for the founders. And I think we just had that amazing little recipe. I was in my niche, I loved being in sales, and the reason I loved being in sales was because if you can be really passionate about your product, you don't actually have to sell it. You can just evangelize about it and be passionate and just get people on board. So I joined a business with 20 people, first salesperson.
Wow.
And, and I think straight away, bringing sales techniques into the business and my own background, we increased the conversions and we just kept growing. And I think what was really useful at that point was that I had direct experience because in my own small business, I diverted my phone calls off to somebody else who'd take them. She might be in Tesco, she might be anywhere, and she was taking my calls for me. And actually what that enabled me to do was totally understand the needs of the customer. And I think that's really stood me in good stead throughout my time at Moneypenny.
And, with so many scale journeys, there's often that kind of the knee of the curve, if you like, where the company is kind of growing along and then all of a sudden there's an opportunity to really scale. What was that point in the Moneypenny journey where you and the team thought, actually, we've got the opportunity now to really scale this business?
Do you not think though that if you go back, and at the time you're in the moment, aren't you? You look at the moment. But you go and draw any business graph and you get your scale moment and then your plateau.
Yeah.
And then you get your scale moment and then your plateau. So for me, it's how close together can we get those scale moments and how short a period can we have for the plateau. So I think over time, we've always had these significant scale moments. Take, for example, the downturn. So 2008, big periods of change for businesses in general, mentalities change and people are so much more willing to adopt new things and really drive change in their own businesses. So when you're in some kind of outsourcing model like we are, it's that moment of change that really does drive the business. And so I think at those periods, pandemic being another one, you really have to be brave and bold and just go and trust that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And if we look at Moneypenny today, 20 million calls and chats, over 21,000 clients in the UK and US, that's a serious scale journey for that period of time. What are some of those lessons, the kind of good bits and also the challenges that you've learned about how to scale a business? Because a lot of businesses, when they embark on that scale journey, that's when they burn out. That's when they overtrade. But your leadership at Moneypenny has created actually, a very successful scale trajectory.
So I think one thing for us is it's been good, steady growth, is that the founders created this scalable model whereby you had teams of 4 or 5 brilliant receptionists taking phone calls for lots of different businesses. And if you scale that within teams of 4 or 5 and make sure that all you're doing is adding on another pod, adding on another pod, adding on another pod, and as long as you've got that process right and you totally understand what it is that makes you as a business, then you can make sure that as you scale, you don't dilute any of your magic sauce, if you like. You can just keep adding. And I think that's what we've been very careful to do as we've scaled. We've got a big mantra here, which is think big, act small. And if you continue to act like the small business that you were 20 years ago, with all the knowledge of a bigger business and lots of other experiences and failures, then I do think that you can make that scalable journey. Just don't go from here to here, do it incrementally.
And how do you actually keep that small business mentality in? Because it's interesting that you say that, because if we float across the pond to the valley and other places, some of those, those massive success stories of these gigantic tech companies that we hear about, when you go and visit those businesses, you realize that actually what you're looking at is actually a diffuse network of kind of pseudo startups as teams. But, in your experience, how have you managed to build that into the culture of Moneypenny? Because whilst it's a fairly typical thing for the US, it's fairly atypical for European and UK businesses.
I think you have to be very protective of your secret sauce again. I think you really you need to try and understand what it is that makes you you, and you need to protect that from all, angles, and make sure that you don't dilute it over time.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about making sure, don't compromise, hire the right people, go on gut feel. If they've got a great CV, that's wonderful. But if you can't imagine them in your business, or you think you are compromising yourself, I think, well, they've got a great skill set, I'm not quite sure, I'd like to work with them long term. You cannot compromise on any of those key ingredients. And even down to the fact, we might have 1,000 people now, but we want everybody in the building or in the business to treat each other just like a small business. Don't walk past somebody and ignore someone. Give them a big smile, say hello, say good morning. There's such a nice feeling here, and it's just all those little things, I think, that really matter, and they really add up.
Yeah. And I think one particularly fascinating aspect for me about your business is, not only do you have to build a company culture for Moneypenny as an organization, but your team are effectively representing the company culture of your clients' businesses as they call in. I think there's two parts to this question, which is, first of all, how have you managed to build a company culture at scale? Because that's important. And how do you adapt your team to be responsive to the culture of the businesses they represent? Because I think that's a real secret sauce factor in the success of Moneypenny.
Yeah, that's right. So deal with the culture at Moneypenny here. There was two key questions that the founders asked themselves when they first set up the business 20 years ago, which are absolutely part of our mantras now, which is how do I want to feel if I was a member of the team? And how do I want to feel if I was a customer? How do I want to feel as an employee? How do I want to be treated? And we still have to hold those hard and fast. So at the moment now, we have such an open door culture. We use Workplace a lot from Facebook, which just enables us to get so much feedback and honesty. I'm a big believer in authentic leadership. And so I think that authenticity comes through in everything that we do. And that enables you to keep the culture and mentality of a small business, because you don't have tons of hierarchy where people are actually afraid to say anything. In terms of being able to replicate our clients' culture, I think that's all down to the people that we hire. We are the biggest private employer in the local area. We're consistently in the top of the Sunday Times 100 companies to work for, top 10, top 15. And a few years in the top 5. And what that enables us to do locally is, well, for example, over the past 12 months, we've had nearly 4,000 CVs of people who want to work for us. With no real recruitment spend, this is just word of mouth. So when you've got this big pipeline of recruitment and you've got a great local reputation, you can cherry pick then. So we can cherry pick the best people to represent law firms, the best people to represent estate agents, very small businesses, because each of those businesses are going to hire somebody with a different kind of personality, different approach, different style, whether it's on live chat or on the phone. So it's about matching those people then. My only job is to look after our people so that they stay, so that they can continue to look after our clients.
And let's stick with that location theme, because again, what we often see is a difference in attitude towards citizenship as a business for businesses that are in, what you would call a tier 1 city. So for example, a business that's in central London may feel much more disconnected from its civic role than businesses outside in tier 2 or other areas. And it seems that actually within Moneypenny, you do have this sense of responsibility to your local area as well. And, whilst on paper that sounds great, it'd be great to get your views on how does that manifest in how you approach leadership? How do you, manifest that responsibility through the actions of the business?
I think if the business does the right things and that the people within the business, everybody can be proud of our actions in the local community, whether it's sponsoring the football kit for one of our PA's children's football team, you know, a couple of £100, or whether it's community programs like We Mind the Gap, and I'm sure you've read about that, where we give local underserved young women a real opportunity to change their lives. I think as long as you can communicate that to the business, tell them what we're doing and why we're doing it and what the benefits are. As a leader, you don't have to force or encourage people. They're just generally proud. And as long as I can be sparkly about it and explain it and really truly believe in it, then I don't think you need to put any facade up and try and make people do something that they don't want to do, because actually it's real.
Yeah. And for you as a leader as well, you know, one of, you know, whether, you know, I see it myself in my own businesses and so many other people you meet, when you're in the business, you're in the business, but it's really important for you as a leader to stay current, to stay innovative, and to be on top of your game. And is, you know, it's something I'm asking all of the people that we're speaking to, but what's your approach to that? How do you make sure that you maintain at that absolute cutting edge of leadership thinking and practice yourself?
I really believe that everybody you speak to, no matter who it is, no matter what industry they're in or what job they do, you can learn one thing from them at least. And so you have to make sure, I think, from every interaction you have, then who are you talking to? What can you learn from them? And go and absorb that and take it on into your own business. So that's a daily, continual learning. I am a member of a couple of different networks so that you have more formal access, I suppose, to people who have got similar roles, similar responsibilities, and similar problems. I want to know more about people's problems and how they've overcome them, their failures and the mistakes they've made, I think, rather than look at their successes, because you learn more then. And also, during the pandemic, I've been very careful to have at least one key business leader, I've never met them before, every week. I drop them a note and I just say, can we just have a chat? It might be the chair of a retail company, and let's share dirty laundry. You know, let's talk about our problems, talk about how they've managed, and that I think has been critical for me over the past 6 months or so.
Yeah. And are those practices that you also encourage in the team? Because I totally agree. I think as a leader, it can be, even if you have a board and non-execs, it still can be quite a lonely role. So having that peer network outside the business is critical. How do you then magnify that approach into your business?
So I think from a number of ways. One thing that we're doing that's more formal is we are mentors for Be the Business. So all of the management team are mentors, not just for what we can teach other businesses or help them, but really anybody that you have and you've got interactions with, then you're going to learn. So I think that's key for our management team. We learn from our clients all the time. You know, they trust us with their phone calls, their chats. We've got a lot of trust for their business. And so we have real good, honest conversations about challenges that we've got, challenges that they've got, and we learn all the time from people like that. So I think from a leadership perspective, I have to make sure that I give my team time to go out there, do something that's not really got tangible returns straight away, you know, and trust that that's actually the right thing to do for them.
And is there a role of resilience in this? And the reason I bring this up is, you know, you've been on the most astonishing scale journey. And one of the common themes rather of those journeys is it puts an immense amount of stress on the chief exec and the senior leadership of those businesses. And so one thing I think is great is if you could share some of those resilience tips, because it is a very, very stressful and pressured time. And so you have to be on top of your own resilience to withstand it.
Well, first of all, I think it's back to authenticity and the fact that I do think that in business, when you kind of cover yourself in a veneer and be a different person in work, I think that's a bit old-fashioned now. You know, look how open we're being and, you know, we're all on Zoom and everything. We're all looking into other people's lives. We are what we are and we're all the same kind of people. And the pressure is immense when you're trying to be somebody else, trying to be somebody that you're not. And so I truly believe in being honest. And so for myself and the leadership team, I don't need to pretend to be fine if I'm not. I can say to my team, I don't know, help me, you know, or I'm finding real trouble with this. What's your view on it? And I think if you can foster that openness amongst the team, also, if we're going to come up with periods where you can, if you look into people's eyes and really look, you know if they're struggling.
Correct.
And they know I can see that too. And I'll sit there and I'll say, come on, help. And then they're very, very willing to share, because I think from a leadership perspective there, you have to create an environment of trust where people don't mind saying, I'm struggling, I failed, this has gone wrong. You know, because I think if they're going to try and pretend nothing's wrong, fix everything, they're not willing to go and put themselves at risk, maybe, by being honest and open. I think then you've got a real culture challenge in the business. So I think it's all down to honesty, openness, and authenticity.
Wow. And I think just sticking on this thread, you know, as you're speaking, it made me kind of refer to some of the studies that have been done recently, where they look at the leadership of different nations in crisis. And, you know, they've shown, rather unsurprisingly, I might add, that female-led nations have done significantly better through the COVID crisis. And if I then expand that to some of the most successful businesses in the world, you find that they do have that, you know, much larger element of female leadership, whereby they're not having this awful hyper alpha toxic masculine culture. You know, do you think that's been a part of the success journey for yourselves, you know, having a much more authentic and not that awful hyper alpha sort of culture within the business?
It could well be. And whether it's male or female, you know, you go and take Jacinda Ardern, she's been amazing in New Zealand. When you think about current role models, gosh, she's been incredible, but she's been open, she's been honest, she's been decisive. If she's made a mistake, she'll admit to it and ask for help. So I think it's those personality traits. I don't think there's much room for ego anymore. I think ego is just a waste of time. You get found out in the end. There's no point being Mr. or Mrs. Charisma if you haven't got the wherewithal to go and back it up. It's just done. It's okay now to be transparent and honest. So I don't know whether that's a male thing, whether it's a female thing. And I think you see both traits in both genders as well, you know, but I just think it's about that whole, we are one of the team, we're part of the journey, we've all got our role to play, no ego.
Wow. And switching gears slightly, looking at technology, you know, one of the things which, again, you know, you see quite commonly now is that every business is a technology business. And again, you know, it's really fascinating hearing about the role of digital transformation in the Moneypenny journey. And I'd love to just get your thoughts on, you know, how you brought technology to the core of the business and how much digital transformation has played a role in the journey of the business too.
I think that, so my approach to that has always been, as a leadership team, you've got to go out there and see what's available. You know, you've got to give people time to explore new technologies, have ideas. 10 of them might be completely rubbish, but one of them might be brilliant. So you've got to create this culture whereby it's okay to fail because you've learned something and then you're going to go on to the next thing. And that, I think, creates an innovative culture there. You've got to stay close to your client base, not just create products that we want to create because you can. You've got to go talk to them and say, what are your problems? What, you know, what am I trying to fix here for you? How do you see that we can develop our relationship? So I think that's been critical. And I just think that any business that stays still and does what they've always done, you know, the world is changing so fast, particularly in the area of communications. We've been creating bots. Live chat's a huge growth channel for us. And digital switchboards, both here and in the States. So I just think it's about staying current, but you can't stay current if you only got your head down and you're pressurizing people just to get the day job done. You've got to go and give them time just to go and look and see what's possible.
Yeah. And you mentioned the States there. And again, you know, Moneypenny has achieved the holy grail of so many of our United Kingdom businesses, which is to successfully commercialize in the US. And I think one of the really practical takeaways people could take from our session today as well is to get some of your tips and advice on, you know, really specifically looking at the US. How do you approach the US as a market? And how do you even make a start at building a presence there?
The first thing I've learned is that we should have immediately sent somebody that you can't spare. So, you know, you say, let's go and try this market over here, but let's make sure that we don't do anything detrimental to our UK business. Now, on hindsight, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I would have gone in all guns blazing and put a lot more resource into the US to start with, because I've learned it's so much easier to backfill here than it is over there. So if you're going to go and do it properly. That's my top tip. I would say don't amend your brand just because you think it might need amending. Go and test your current model, go and test your current marketing messaging and use that as your baseline, and then go and test against it, because you know how it works in the UK. And when we went out there, there was people that say, oh, that word's wrong and that word's wrong and you need to do this a bit differently. And we were quite straight with ourselves and said, no, we're going to go in as we know it works in the UK and go and see how that is affected by the US model. And I think that stood us in really good stead as well. And thirdly, I'd say there is a completely different culture, and you cannot be the leader that you are in the UK or in Europe and go and take that exact model over to the US.
And you know, whilst obviously, you know, you as a business and your team have had success there, I think, you know, failure is an important part of the growth journey. And, you know, I'd love to get kind of two angles on this really. So first of all, for you as a leader, and naturally the higher up you get in a business, the consequences of failure are larger. And so I'd love to get, first of all, your reflections on what failure means to you, but also, how do you encourage your team to be okay with it? Because again, in scaling businesses, it's going to happen, and you have to build a culture that within parameters allows failure to be part of the journey.
Yeah, so from my own personal perspective, I've failed so many times, but it's about saying, well, have I learned from it? Don't get kicked down by it, dust yourself off, get back up again, because actually, you need to continue having confidence in your own ability. And it's when you start to lose confidence for whatever reason, I think that's when you stop taking the risks that you need to do to have a growing, scaling, entrepreneurial style business. And also it affects how you appear to everybody else as well. So be confident. So failure, dust yourself down, get back on again. Don't let it stop you. And I'd also listen to people. I also think if you failed on something, go and get that feedback. There's so many people that have seen you fail and they've all helped you. So go and ask them what they think as well, and be really honest and take the feedback, wrap it up and say, right, okay, off you go, and then forget about it. So don't let it affect your behaviours today, apart from in a good way. So that's one. As far as the wider team's concerned, I think again that comes back to having a culture where it's okay to fail. It's okay to say I need help. It's okay to say that didn't work. And one of my real approaches to leadership is to create a vacuum. The only way we can grow is if I grow and get out of people's way and create a vacuum for them to step into. If I'm going to be a leader that sits here over everyone's heads, nobody's ever going to grow and the business won't go any further. So my job's to grow, get out their way, create the vacuum. People might say, I can't do that. We say, yeah, you can, and I'm here to support you. And if it goes wrong, don't worry, we're in it together. And I think if you can create that feeling within your senior team, I think that is hugely valuable.
Wow,
they've got to trust you.
Yeah. And kind of on the flip side, there's a kind of a bit of a roundup question, if I may, which is, you know, success is one of those weird words, you know, you're a successful leader, the business is successful, and it's become one of those words which almost has lost some meaning. So as a bit of a roundup question, which is something that I'd love to get your views on, is what does success mean to you? So when you think of your own journey and the journey of your business, when you feel, right, I'm succeeding, what does that mean to you?
It means there's a couple of different ways from a couple of different angles for me. I love it when you can go to an event with a room full of law firms or a room full of estate agents or small businesses, and people say, I use Moneypenny and you're amazing. Yeah. That's success, because that means that you're delivering what it says on the tin, and you can go and deliver more of it with more confidence and more passion. I love it when you see people here. We've got so many people that have been here for 10 years, for example. And especially with workplace, because it's such a transparent environment. Yeah. People will say, we've got a group called I Love Moneypenny, and they'll say, I love working here. I've told all my friends I love working here. That's success, because you've created a workplace that's got an amazing local reputation that people want to work at. So you could be really, really proud of that. And I'm really proud of creating jobs in Wrexham. I'm really proud that we've taken this business of 15 people, and that now, I mean, we're recruiting 160 people at the moment in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. That is just incredible. And who's doing that? And we've done that through all working together, through everybody feeling as important as each other. And that is success to me, is that everybody's on the bus and they're all going in the same direction.
Wow. No, Joanna, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today. You know, your journey's been inspiring. Moneypenny's one of our biggest success stories in the North, and a business which, you know, no doubt we should be and are in many ways shouting about as one of the great examples of entrepreneurship and leadership here. It's been great having you on today. And I know so many people are going to watch this and learn lots that they can apply to their own journey. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. And I couldn't have done any of that without the team I've got, the founders, and all the support that we've got from customers and everyone else. So definitely a team effort there, Vikram.
Great. Thank you.